Deuteronomy chapters 14 through 16. Ye are the children of the Lord your God. Ye shall not make any baldness between your eyes for the dead, for thou art a holy people to the Lord thy God. And the Lord thy God has chosen thee to be a peculiar people to himself of all nations on the face of the earth. Ye shall not eat any abominable thing. These are the beasts which ye shall eat: the calf of the herd, and the lamb of the sheep, and kid of the goats, the stag, and doe, and pygarg, and wild goat, and camelopard. Every beast that divides the hoofs, and makes claws of two divisions, and that chews the cud among the beasts, these ye shall eat. And these ye shall not eat of them that chew the cud, and of those that divide the hoofs, and make distinct claws, the camel, and the hare, and the rabbit, because they chew the cud, and do not divide the hoof. These are unclean to you. And as for swine, because he divides the hoof, and makes claws of the hoof, yet he chews not the cud, he is unclean to you. Ye shall not eat of their flesh, ye shall not touch their dead bodies. And these ye shall eat of all that are in the water. Ye shall eat all that have fins and scales, and all that have not fins and scales ye shall not eat. They are unclean to you. Ye shall eat every clean bird, and these of them ye shall not eat: the eagle, and the ossifrage, and the sea eagle, and the vulture, and the kite, and the like to it, and the sparrow, and the owl, and the seamew, and the heron, and the swan, and the stork, and the cormorant, and the hawk, and its like, and the hoopoe, and the raven, and the pelican, and the diver, and the like to it, and the red bill, and the bat. All winged animals that creep are unclean to you. Ye shall not eat of them. Ye shall eat every clean bird. Ye shall eat nothing that dies of itself. It shall be given to the sojourner in thy cities, and he shall eat it. Or thou shalt sell it to a stranger, because thou art a holy people to the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not boil a lamb in his mother's milk. Thou shalt tithe the tenth of all the produce of thy seed, the fruit of thy field, year by year. And thou shalt eat it in the place which the Lord thy God shall choose to have his name called there. Ye shall bring the tithe of thy corn, and of thy wine, and of thine oil, of the firstborn of thy herd, and of thy flock, and thou mayest learn to fear the Lord thy God always. And if the journey be too far for thee, and thou art not able to bring them, because the place is far from thee, which the Lord thy God shall choose to have his name called there, because the Lord thy God will bless thee, then thou shalt sell them for money, and thou shalt take the money in thy hands, and thou shalt go to the place which the Lord thy God shall choose. And thou shalt give the money for whatsoever thy soul shall desire, for oxen, or for sheep, or for wine, or thou shalt lay it out on strong drink, or on whatsoever thy soul may desire, and thou shalt eat there before the Lord thy God, and thou shalt rejoice in thy house, and the Levite that is in thy cities, because he has not a portion or inheritance with thee. After 3 years thou shalt bring out all the tithes of thy fruits. In that year thou shalt lay it up in thy cities. And the Levite shall come, because he has no part or lot with thee, and the stranger, and the orphan, and the widow, which is in thy cities. And they shall eat and be filled, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the works which thou shalt do. Every 7 years thou shalt make a release, and this is the ordinance of the release. Thou shalt remit every private debt which thy neighbor owes thee, and thou shalt not ask payment of it from thy brother, for it has been called a release to the Lord thy God. Of a stranger thou shalt ask again whatsoever he has of thine, but to thy brother thou shalt remit his debt to thee. For thus there shall not be a poor person in the midst of thee, for the Lord thy God will surely bless thee, in the land which the Lord thy God gives thee by inheritance, that thou shouldest inherit it. And if ye indeed hearken to the voice of the Lord your God, to keep and do all these commandments, as many as I charge thee this day, for the Lord thy God has blessed thee in the way in which he spoke to thee, then thou shalt lend to many nations, but thou shalt not borrow, and thou shalt rule over many nations, but they shall not rule over thee. And if there shall be in the midst of thee a poor man of thy brethren in one of thy cities in the land, which the Lord thy God gives thee, thou shalt not harden thy heart, neither shalt thou by any means close up thine hand from thy brother who is in want. Thou shalt surely open thine hands to him, and shalt lend to him as much as he wants according to his need. Take heed to thyself that there be not a secret thing in thine heart, and iniquity, saying, The 7th year, the year of release, draws nigh, and thine eye shall be evil to thy brother that is in want, and thou shalt not give to him, and he shall cry against thee to the Lord, and there shall be great sin in thee. Thou shalt surely give to him, and thou shalt lend him as much as he wants, according as his need, and thou shalt not grudge in thine heart as thou givest to him, because on this account the Lord thy God will bless thee in all thy works, and in all thy things on which thou shalt lay thine hand. For the poor shall not fail off thy land. Therefore I charge thee to do this thing, saying, Thou shalt surely open thine hands to thy poor brother, and to him that is distressed upon thy land. And if thy brother or sister, a Hebrew man or Hebrew woman, be sold to thee, he shall serve thee 6 years, and in the 7th year thou shalt send him out free from thee. And when thou shalt send him out free from thee, thou shalt not send him out empty. Thou shalt give him provision from the way of the flock, and from thy corn, and from thy wine. As the Lord thy God has blessed thee, thou shalt give to him. And thou shalt remember that thou wast a servant in the land of Egypt, and the Lord thy God redeemed thee from thence. Therefore I charge thee to do this thing. And if he should say to thee, I will not go out from thee, because he continues to love thee and thy house, because he is well with thee, then thou shalt take an awl, and bore his ears through the door, and he shall be a servant forever. And in like manner shalt thou do to thy maidservant. It shall not seem hard to thee when they are sent out from thee, because thy servant has served thee 6 years according to the annual hire of a hireling. So the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all things whatsoever thou mayest do. Every firstborn that shall be born among thy kine and thy sheep, thou shalt sanctify the males to the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not work with thy firstborn calf, and thou shalt not shear the firstborn of thy sheep. Thou shalt eat it before the Lord year by year, in a place which the Lord thy God shall choose, thou and thy house. And if there be in it a blemish, if it be lame or blind, an evil blemish, thou shalt not sacrifice it to the Lord thy God. Thou shalt eat it in thy cities. The unclean in thee and the clean shall eat in like manner as the doe or the stag. Only ye shall not eat the blood. Thou shalt pour it out on the earth as water. Observe the month of new corn, and thou shalt sacrifice the Passover to the Lord thy God, because in the month of new corn thou camest out of Egypt by night. And thou shalt sacrifice the Passover to the Lord thy God, sheep and oxen, in the place which the Lord thy God shall choose to have his name called upon it. Thou shalt not eat leaven with it. 7 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread with it, bread of affliction, because ye came forth out of Egypt in haste, that ye may remember the day of your coming forth out of the land of Egypt all the days of your life. Leaven shall not be seen with thee in all thy borders for 7 days. And there shall not be left of the flesh which thou shalt sacrifice at even on the first day until the morning. Thou shalt not have power to sacrifice the Passover in any of the cities which the Lord thy God gives thee. But in the place which the Lord thy God shall choose, to have his name called there, thou shalt sacrifice the Passover at even, at the setting of the sun, at the time when thou camest out of Egypt. And thou shalt boil and roast and eat it in the place which the Lord thy God shall choose. And thou shalt return in the morning, and go to thy house. 6 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day is a holiday, a feast to the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not do in it any work, save what must be done by anyone. 7 weeks shalt thou number to thyself, when thou hast begun to put sickle to the corn. Thou shalt begin to number 7 weeks. And thou shalt keep the feast of weeks to the Lord thy God, according as thy hand has power in as many things as the Lord thy God shall give thee. And thou shalt rejoice before the Lord thy God, thou and thy son, and thy daughter, thy manservant, and thy maidservant, and the Levite, and the stranger, and the orphan, and the widow which dwells among you, in whatsoever place the Lord thy God shall choose, that his name should be called there. And thou shalt remember that thou wast a servant in the land of Egypt, and thou shalt observe and do these commandments. Thou shalt keep for thyself the feast of tabernacles 7 days, when thou gatherest in thy produce from thy corn floor and thy winepress. And thou shalt rejoice in thy feast, thou and thy son and thy daughter, thy manservant and thy maidservant, and the Levite, and the stranger, and the orphan, and the widow that is in thy cities. 7 days shalt thou keep a feast to the Lord thy God in a place which the Lord thy God shall choose for himself. And if the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all thy fruits, and in every work of thy hands, then shalt thou rejoice. 3 times in the year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place where the Lord shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, in the feast of weeks, in the feast of tabernacles. Thou shalt not appear before the Lord thy God empty. Each one according to his ability, according to the blessing of the Lord thy God, which he has given thee. Thou shalt make for thyself judges and officers in thy cities, which the Lord thy God gives thee in thy tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. They shall not wrest judgment, nor favor persons, nor receive a gift, for gifts blind the eyes of the wise, and pervert the words of the righteous. Thou shalt justly pursue justice, that ye may live, and go in and inherit the land which the Lord thy God gives thee. Thou shalt not plant for thyself a grove. Thou shalt not plant for thyself any tree near the altar of thy God. Thou shalt not set up for thyself a pillar, which the Lord thy God hates. Psalm 57, 58 in Hebrew. For the end, destroy not, by David, for memorial. If ye do indeed speak righteousness, then do ye judge rightly, ye sons of men. For ye work iniquities in your hearts in the earth. Your hands plot unrighteousness. Sinners have gone astray from the womb. They go astray from the belly. They speak lies. Their venom is like that of a serpent, as that of a deaf asp, and it stops her ears, which will not hear the voice of the charmers, nor heed the charm prepared skillfully by the wise. God has crushed their teeth in their mouth. God has broken the cheek teeth of the lions. They shall utterly pass away like water running through. He shall bend his bow till they fail. They shall be destroyed as melted wax. The fire has fallen, and they have not seen the sun. Before your thorns feel the white thorn. He shall swallow you up as living, as in his wrath. The righteous shall rejoice when he sees the vengeance of the ungodly. He shall wash his hands in the blood of the sinner. And a man shall say, Verily, then there is a reward for the righteous. Verily, there is a God that judges them in the earth. Proverbs chapter 12, verses 1 through 5. He that loves instruction loves sense, but he that hates reproofs is a fool. He that has found favor with the Lord is made better, but a transgressor shall be passed over in silence. A man shall not prosper by wickedness, but the roots of the righteous shall not be taken up. A virtuous woman is a crown to her husband, but as a worm in wood, so a bad woman destroys her husband. The thoughts of the righteous are true judgments, but ungodly men devise deceits. The Holy Gospel according to St. Mark, chapter 9, verses 30 through 50. And they departed thence, and passed through Galilee, and he would not that any man should know it. For he taught his disciples, and said unto them, The Son of Man is delivered into the hands of men, and they shall kill him, and after that he is killed, he shall rise the third day. But they understood not that saying, and were afraid to ask him. And he came to Capernaum, and being in the house, he asked them, What was it that ye disputed among yourselves by the way? But they held their peace, for by the way they had disputed among themselves, who should be the greatest. And he sat down, and called the 12, and saith unto them, If any man desire to be first, the same shall be last of all, and the servant of all. And he took a child, and set him in the midst of them. And when he had taken him in his arms, he said unto them, Whosoever shall receive one of such children in my name, receiveth me. And whosoever shall receive me, receiveth not me, but him that sent me. And John answered him, saying, Master, we saw one casting out devils in thy name, and he followeth not us, and we forbade him, because he followeth not us. But Jesus said, Forbid him not, for there is no man which shall do a miracle in my name that can lightly speak evil of me. For he that is not against us is on our part. For whosoever shall give you a cup of water to drink in my name, because ye belong to Christ, verily I say unto you, he shall not lose his reward. And whosoever shall offend one of these little ones that believe in me, it is better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and he were cast into the sea. And if thy hand offend thee, cut it off. It is better for thee to enter into life maimed, than having 2 hands to go into hell, into the fire that never shall be quenched, where their worm dieth not, and the fire is not quenched. And if thy foot offend thee, cut it off. It is better for thee to enter halt into life, than having 2 feet to be cast into hell, into the fire that never shall be quenched, where their worm dieth not, and the fire is not quenched. And if thine eye offend thee, pluck it out. It is better for thee to enter into the kingdom of God with 1 eye, than having 2 eyes to be cast into hell fire, where their worm dieth not, and the fire is not quenched. For every one shall be salted with fire, and every sacrifice shall be salted with salt. Salt is good, but the salt have lost its saltness, wherewith will ye season it? Have salt in yourselves, and have peace one with another.